The UK came sixth in a ranking that we, Pearson, commissioned from the Economist Intelligence Unit, and the factors that went into it were how well the countries do in international comparisons, the graduation rates from school and university, and literacy levels in the adult population. And the ingredients of a good education system are good teachers, clear expectations, devolved funding to school and the front line, and clear accountability for performance. If you look at the last 50 years, what you see is the rise to a very dominant position of the classic 20th century university. Almost every university in the developed world, and increasingly in the developing world, aspires one day to be like Harvard. Big solid buildings, good research program, lots of students paying lots of money, good scholarships, recruiting best faculty. And you could say right now is the kind of triumph of that model. But under the surface, what you see are some threats to that. The impact of technology, the ability of teaching and learning to go online, the growth in the cost of a degree, making it unaffordable for many students, the fall in the value of a degree. Very often graduates find themselves unemployed in the modern world. So at the same time as technology is changing everything, you've got growing costs and falling value of a degree. And these things under the surface threaten the traditional model. And that's why we argue that a revolution is coming. The difficult thing to predict is exactly when it's going to come. The important thing about technology in education is not to let the technology drive the solution. What needs to drive the solution are the outcomes you want from the education system. And so technology is most powerful when it's combined with great teaching and a clear vision of what the education system is trying to achieve. So, for example, in higher education, you can get the best professors in the world teaching online all around the world. Instead of teaching 100 students in a classroom in Stanford or Harvard or Oxford, they can teach 200,000 students all around the world at once. A good friend of mine lives in the Republic of Ireland, never leaves home, but he has a video conference suite. He teaches film production on 3 continents without ever leaving his house. There's a revolution sweeping through business that affects education as it's sweeping through every other line of business, and it's globalization and technology and the combination of the two. So what you see are businesses increasingly shifting from selling products to providing services. You might think that Rolls-Royce, that builds airline engines, is a classic product selling business, but actually what it does is sell a performing engine for 15 years. So you buy the engine, but that's not the end, that's the beginning. They will guarantee its maintenance for 15 years. So even airline engines are shifting from being a product to being a service. And then you've got to sell globally, you've got to persuade people that your products work. It's not good enough to have good advertising. You have to demonstrate the impact of what you're doing. And in education companies, that's even more important. No education company is going to thrive in the 21st century unless it can show that its products and services really benefit the learners who use them. One of the most urgent challenges on planet Earth is to get the quality of education to a very high standard, not just in Singapore and Finland and Korea and Europe and Canada, but everywhere, including the developing world. Many of the problems we face around the world, whether it's conflict, wealth and poverty, the huge growth in the cities we see, the fact that there are going to be 9 billion people on the planet in 2050, whereas when I was born there were just 2.5 billion. All of these things make big demands on the future. Environmental pressures, economic pressures and so on. Unless we educate everybody on the planet really well, we won't be able to solve those problems. And so a focus of global attention on improving education in the developing world is absolutely fundamental in the next 10 years. There's quite a lot of innovation under the surface in developing countries. when you look at the big picture, performance in developing countries in education systems is not improving fast enough, but there are some great experiments. So there's increasing provision using technology of education direct to the student, which is bypassing traditional, in some ways moribund schools built on the 20th century model. So there's innovation in that capacity. I see some fantastic new universities using scholarships and education of people before they apply to university, picking people who might one day get to university and giving them the training and coaching to get them into university. I see that in India and Pakistan, for example. So there are lots of big innovations around out there, and we need a combination of improving each education system using the evidence we've got and investment in education to accelerate the rate of progress in the developing world. There's always room for improvement in the dialogue between policymakers and educators. One of the ways I characterise this debate is if the experts in an education system are generally trying to look 20 years ahead. The politicians and often the teachers themselves are getting through the day. The politicians are focused on the next 2 or 3 years because of electoral cycles and so on. The teachers are under pressure because it's hard being a teacher and you're planning tomorrow's lessons all the time. And the parents who use the system are thinking about the education they had 20 or 25 years ago. If you put all that together, the experts are 20 years ahead of the present, the parents are 20 years behind the present. That's a 40-year perception gap between, if you like, the voters, the parents, the consumers, and the experts. And the teachers and the politicians are caught somewhere in the middle of this 20-year, 40-year perception gap. And one of the challenges for political leaders of education system is to be the person that says to the population, that's where we're going and this is why we're doing it. The thing I'm looking forward to most at OEB 2012 is learning from the people who are here. What are the cutting edge innovations? Picking the ideas that may be the ones that will transform the future. It's always hard to predict which ideas are going to succeed and which ones won't, but getting a range of insights from the participants here and trying to think with them, learn from them, what's going to change education for the better in the next 5 to 10 years.